very good evening and welcome to this edition of the Fourth Estate. Charles Mwangushampage. President Museveni finally makes the cabinet reshuffle the country has been waiting for. A lot of fake reshuffles were circulated on social media long before, and even yesterday when this cabinet, the reshuffle list finally came out, many people asking, is this one finally legit? So a lot of the sharing, people were quite skeptical for some time. But President, it's now official. Janat Mukwaya has been dropped. Alhaji Abdu Naduli has been dropped. Irene Muloni, Minister for Energy and Mineral Development, was dropped. Monica Ntege Azuba, Minister of Works and Transport, was dropped. Charles Bakabulindi, some people are asking, Charles Bakabulindi had stayed as State Minister for Sports for so long. Yeah. He felt he owned the space there. Has been dropped. Aida Nantaba was also dropped, and 8 new people joined the cabinet. Those are Raphael Majezi, Judith Nabakova, Jackson Kafuzi, Beatrice Anywa, Dennis Samson Obua, Peter Ogwang, Mole Kamukama, and Helen Adoha. Now the debate is, this cabinet coming a few days after President Museveni led the walk against corruption, does this reflect his fight against corruption? Those he dropped and those he brought on board, and those he shuffled from within. Number 2, heading into an election year, does this represent an election year cabinet? We'll be analyzing largely from those 2 broad perspectives of the cabinet reshuffle that was announced Saturday evening. Justice Kenneth Kakuru, the star of the Constitutional Court, ruling in that petition by Kiza Besigye against some sections of the Penal Code Act which he felt were unconstitutional. Besigye lost that petition to the Constitutional Court. The debate has been in what some legal lawyers call it obiter of Justice Kakuru. Others ask what the import of it is. I also spent some time discussing a little bit on the ongoing natural disasters in Bundebujo and the other parts of the country, and broadly East Africa and the rest of the world, actually, because it's happening in different formations in different parts of the world. I have with me in studio tonight, I have from the extreme end, I have Yusuf Serunkuma. Yusuf is an academic and a columnist with The Observer. Yusuf, very nice to have you.
Thank you.
I have Agatha Atuhaire. Agatha is an independent journalist and a lawyer. Very nice to have you.
Thank you, Charles.
I also have Dicta Asima, who is a senior writer with the East African newspaper. Ladies and Yusuf, you're very nice to have you this evening. Let's start with the cabinet. Yusuf, any surprises for you?
No.
Why?
There are 2 ways to think about a cabinet reshuffle. The first is you think about a cabinet reshuffle as a national question. There is demand for a few things to be done in the country, and you need to have some technical people emerge at either the top or somewhere in between, so that they provide guidance. So that's one way. So if you think about a reshuffle through the lens of a national question, then the cabinet will be more technical. But if you think about a reshuffle through a political party,
through political lenses.
Through political
Which
lenses.
it is.
Well, through a political party, the reshuffle is always political. It's either a reward or a statement of approval. So under the circumstances, if you look back after the Tojikwatiko campaign, as we moved into the next election, and Mr. Museveni telling us over and over again that I'm here to stay, there are things that have to be made visible. And one of those is changing people who actually supported what has been happening. The entire process of leading to a life presidency, they have to be rewarded. So you have Beatrice Anywa, you have Nabakova, and all these new arrivals, Raphael Majezi. They are rewards, but the bigger picture is their statements of approval, that I'm here to stay. And if you're willing to work with me in this process of staying for long, I'm ready to reward you. It's actually more not to the rewardees, but to those who are looking. If you're looking,
the timing of that is critical, because you do this cabinet has been waited for a very long time. The role of the Magezis, the Kafuzis, because Kafuzi was the second, people have been asking who is Kafuzi, where has he come from? And to be elevated to a position, a critical ministry, Attorney General's chambers as a Deputy Attorney General, people were asking. But Jackson Kafuzi is the person who seconded Magezi's motion on the floor of the House. Magezi proposed and ran with that bill. Beatrice Anywa has zigzagged quite a bit in many areas, but the constituency that she comes from has some implication on why she comes on board finally, even when whether it's a reward or not. Dennis Samson Obua, yes, played his role. Peter Gwang, Moleka Mukama, an interesting move from PPS into to cabinet, and Helen Adoa. But don't you think that if this was just about rewards, then these would have come much, much earlier? Not now, when you're going into an election year. Electorally, what do they bring?
I don't know whether it matters as to when the reward would have come. But I think the bigger picture is to, I mean, there are two ways. So one of it's a reward, basically. I don't think it matters when it would have come. At any time is good. But we are ending 2019, and we only have one in between. So you need to show that you approve of those who support you. So that's the biggest statement. But for me, as an observer and as a commentator on politics in this country, what is most striking for me is the message to the opposition, to tell you that I'm actually here to stay. Because if you are approving of those who supported what looked like a violent coup against the constitution of this country, and you're rewarding those who like midwifed the coup, the statement should be clear to those in the opposition that he's not here to go anywhere at one time. He's here to stay.
I thought people knew that a long time ago. Well, but it wouldn't be coming in 2019 when he's making 34 years in power.
Because look, let me finish on an interesting note,
Yes.
Charles. And because you look at the political players on the other side, they still continue with these easy, linear gigs. They keep doing what looks very conventional as a political player. Yet over and over again, the man on the other side is assuring that I'm here, I'm not going anywhere.
Agatha, let me come to you. What does this cabinet make? What do you make of it?
I have heard some people say Museveni is unpredictable, but they are wrong. Like, this is what everyone expected. I don't know if there's anyone who expected to see Ida Nantaba on the new list, for example, or not to see like Majezi somewhere. Maybe we are now wondering why Nsubuga isn't. But like what Yusuf is saying is Museveni, like all his other cabinet lists and reshuffles before, it's about rewarding loyalty, and those that were not loyal in one way or the other, you see your way out. Yeah, I think Moloni had really overstayed her welcome. I don't know why they had let her be there for that long, considering Ministry of Energy issues, those that have been there, Karuma, Isimba, all those corruption things, and then now the oil question. So I think that maybe he needed to make a change. Whether it's it will aid in his re-election or not, I am not sure, because unless he's trying to get these constituencies where he has gotten these people from, which I think he didn't need that either. But yeah, basically.
Okay. I'll hold back a little bit, and then also hear from Dictor. What do you think? What do you make of it?
I actually think it's an election year
cabinet.
Because here's the thing. We know that President Museveni doesn't give ministerial jobs so that people can go and look for votes. He gives ministerial positions so that people can use them to boost their coming into, because if this is a minister of government, the NRM will do what they can to help them return. If you take Majezi, for example, he's been struggling. He's been struggling. At some point, he was appealing for a new constituency so that he can fend off a few of his opponents, like generally because of what he did with the age limit. He's been struggling, so they are giving him a cabinet position so that government can then, should I say, the NRM can work with him to return as minister. For me, that's why I think it's an election campaign, because you see, most of the people who look for votes are not members of cabinet. If you take Tumukunde, for example, he was outside at the time. He was in 2016. He was not in cabinet. If you go back as far as 2011, you'll find Moses Chigongo and others. Again, they were not in cabinet. So the people who actually
Moses Chigongo wasn't in cabinet.
Yes, that's the point I'm making. That if
He's
you
actually never been.
yes, and that's the point I'm making, that the people who work on the campaign for Museveni, whether it's gathering resources or whatever, will not be in cabinet. The people who are in cabinet
wait a minute.
will be so that they can come back as MPs, so that they can.
Wait a minute. I would, and we're going to have to make this. So don't wait for me to ask you to come in and contribute. Come in when you feel you want to come in, so I can debate it. Cabinets made especially towards a critical election would reflect critical constituencies that the president wants to win over. The people who get dropped are those you look at them on what kind of damage they would cause if they went out there and started grumbling loudly. So if you look at Tumukunde comes on board at a time he comes on board because it's better, it's safer to have him on the inside than on the outside. I'm looking through this cabinet, especially the newcomers on the cabinet. Like I said, in my own view, Magezi, Nabakova, Kafuzi, from a perspective of the constituency, from a perspective of the region they come from, the areas they come from, Kafuzi comes from Toro, from Kiaka, Nabakova from here in Mitiana, Magezi in Bushenyi. I want to concentrate on these three for the moment.
Nabanja?
No. I want to concentrate on these three for the moment. Are they people who would swing an electorate? Are they people who make their areas believe we have our space on the table? Because sometimes that's the consideration. Look at the cabinet that the president appointed going into after Amama Mbabazi had announced he was going to run for presidency, or after he had fallen out. He picked, I remember us discussing here in this table, he picked the entire Chigezi sub-region and brought it on board to say, look, I have a threat that comes from this area. I need to appoint somebody, one, to cover significant ground, but number two, to show these people that they belong to me, they don't belong to Japan. I am looking around this, and a part of me thinks, how long will this reshuffle last? Because unlike previously, President Museveni leaves only one position open. And it's been open for a long time. The State Minister for Elderly and People with Disabilities. Since Chebako Zemadada left that position, it's never been filled. It hasn't been filled. Previously, you'd expect that he would leave 2, 3, 4, 5 positions empty to keep people guessing that they might move into those positions. He hasn't done that. You're looking for technical competencies among these people. It's not, especially among the new crop. You'd not seem to find that they are picked because of those technical abilities. If you talk about people like Irene Muloni is an engineer, was at UEB before she joined cabinet. Monica Ntega Zuba at Works is a technical person. So that doesn't answer it for me.
Yeah, that's true.
And I'm looking at this, I'm saying, okay, so you rewarded
But you
this.
don't need a technical
No,
person
you
in a
rewarded
ministerial
the people who
position.
did. Yes,
Sometimes you
this
don't.
is a reward for delivering age limit.
Yeah, but in agreement
but
with you, if you look at those that we have dropped at the same time, if you're looking at those who can deliver an election, Ida Nanta was still a kingmaker in Kayonga.
I would imagine
Right,
so.
They would have kept her on the cabinet. If
Yes.
she were, when you look at Hajina Dulin, where he has still power, he would have kept his place. Janet Mkwaya, I mean, if you had Naduli and Janet Mkwaya as Muslims, you would argue they kept the Muslim constituency on board. But when he prefers to drop all those, it means there's nothing to do with this election in this cabinet. It's not about the election. It's actually a reward. And the power of this reward is, I think, is outside of the election. It's to do with the violence that was wreaked against the Constitution. If you appreciate this cabinet through the lens of the violence against the Constitution, then you're better off. But also we're making a big mistake here to actually work under the assumption that Museveni needs to win an election to keep the presidency.
Yes.
No, he doesn't.
And that's
see,
the point I was about to
If you
make.
look at the amount of investment he
like
makes
this-
into winning this election, even if he doesn't need to put it in.
No. Charles, look here. This is not about Museveni, because like I said, Museveni does not win an election through his cabinet. He wins it in other ways.
It's true.
So this is not about him. It's about beating people in line. You do this for me, I do this for you. You need to stay an MP, do something for me, I'll do something for you. Because when Parliament finally comes back, he needs people that he knows he can trust to do the things he's asked them to do. It's an election cabinet, yes.
In what sense?
But it's not an election. It's not an elect Museveni cabinet. It's
maybe you want to say it's an election to show that I am power and I give to those that who support me.
I don't know. My position is very difficult this evening. My position is very difficult. I would want to have you guys do the debate. Me, I only ask the questions and watch as we discuss. Every election since 1996, President Museveni has won those elections, won by working the sentiments of the people who vote for him. Yes, you can accuse him of rigging the elections, but he also knows how to work the politics. Long time ago, you had kingmakers in larger districts of Bushenyi, of Mbarara, of Untungamo, of Kabale, Rukunjiri, go through Toro, go through Bunyoro, go through the north. He needed to rely on certain people.
That changed.
Wait, that changes along the way. I gave you an example of a very recent election, 2016, and how he rewarded those who were to help him fend off the challenge for Mama Mbabazi.
Maybe now he has a
You-
lot
you-
I
of
don't
such
see that.
challenge.
No. First of all, let me
fact-
ask you. Let me ask you. The people that came in because of Mama Mbabazi, they are still in this cabinet, right?
Some
No.
of them. No, actually, a large number of them
They
have
are
since
still
dropped out.
in. No.
Some of them are not in.
So because for me, the person that I can think of that was really
Mariam
really an Amama Mbabazi pick was Wariomunsi and Hakana Rugunda as Prime Minister.
And then Bahati.
So and Bahat
When
had
did
been
Bahati
there.
come in?
So for me, those are the two that were picked for the Amama Mbabazi purpose because Amama.
How
What
many
about
ministers came from
Tumukunde?
the Chigezo sub-region in the last election?
Tumukunde came in after
How
the
many?
election.
No, who else?
How many came in?
So whichever.
Herbert Kabafunzachi, Herbert Kabafunzachi, almost the whole of Kabale, every district, which is a constituency now.
Who did Kabafunzachi beat in the election? Was it? Kabafunzachi was sort of replacing Ahabwe. Ahabwe had been there.
Perez Ahabwe had been dropped from cabinet much earlier.
Yeah, but
Yes,
there was sort
it was
of
a reward for the person who beat
Because-
the why am I forgetting the name from FDC?
Yeah, but you have to remember that they had dropped Amama Mbabazi and Hope Mwesige, sorry.
You mean Jack?
Jack Savit, yes.
Yeah, but the point I'm making is that you have to remember they had dropped two big positions. So they brought in those people many years, but for me the ones that I'd say were picks for Amama Mbabazi were
Okay.
Bariomunsi and Rugunda, because Rugunda was Prime Minister, and then Bariomunsi was like Amama Mbabazi's biggest enemy in that region, so he had sort of switched camps. The others, not really. It was other calculations.
You say Bariomunsi had been in cabinet before?
No.
Eh?
No.
No. When did Bariomunsi come into cabinet?
He came after the Amama Mbabazi saga.
Okay.
But just, do you realize we're making a big mistake here? The more we insist discussing this cabinet through the lens of election, I think it's a big mistake.
We can't avoid it.
Because there's so many considerations that go into this cabinet,
Yeah.
besides the election.
I'm looking for those
It might
considerations
contribute
from
to
you
a small
guys.
part, right? It might contribute a small part. But, you know, for example, we say, I mean, if you want to win the election, you have to win the places with the biggest constituencies, right? The majorities. I mean, Buganda, Busoga. But we're not debating those places, right? If we were to think through the lens of the election, I think we need to look elsewhere. I would perhaps suggest, I may not have the actual answers now, but I think we need to look elsewhere. And one of them, the stick one for me, is that it's an indication of power. It's an approval of violence. Not violence in the outright sense of guns blazing and stones flying, but in the sense of that if you support me to write the constitution, if you support me in my pursuit
We
of
talked
absolute
about
power,
it. You did
I think
that.
that's an
You
interesting
did
lens to
explain
see
that
as
about
opposed
the
to-
reward.
exactly.
Beyond that, what next?
And that's also an
So-
invitation.
so-
It's an
so
invitation to those in the
here's-
opposition
here's
or
what
those
I
NRM.
think. This is what I think. One, regions like Uganda are almost not taken seriously anymore.
That's not
Why?
true.
Because
How can you
Like,
not take
That's
it
what- how can you
seriously
not
when
take-
you have a contender
no,
from there?
You have the seat of the
yes, but you
government.
guys look at if and now I'm coming from Chelsea's argument, because if he argues that it has to be about the election, he's basically dropped almost all the people from Buganda and
Exactly.
not replaced them. That's one. Two, if I were Frank Tumwebaze, I'd be slightly worried about that posting. Here's why. The last time a man was sent to that ministry, he was rejected. Two,
Who was rejected?
it was Kawejira, I believe. Do you know any man who has been at gender as a cabinet minister? I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one. Two, if you consider that, I feel like Nabakova got where she is now because Museveni feels like Tumwebaze hasn't focused too much on talking in this term. He has not delivered, because that used to be like his strength.
And neither is now Koba talking.
No, because Nabakova was like, she kept quiet, but if I was reading into this, I would say she needs someone, because when Nabakova was police spokesperson, she was very, like, you saw her all over and she seemed to be doing a decent job.
Simone Sugo was better maybe than now Koba, one would argue.
Well,
I don't know.
But we're still caught up in the election thing, and I think because think about it.
I can't tell you.
Charles, think
I
about
can
it
tell
the other
you.
side. If you wanted the election, who would we, under the political dispensation, because we're now talking the Bob Wine moment. Bob Wine is like imagine the biggest contender. When we had the
Thank
Mbabazi
you.
moment, we had cabinet that reflected a response to Mbabazi. What would be doing if we respond to but we would have Butcherman as minister because we'll be able to
No. I think
maybe we vulgarize the debate to that level.
Without due respect,
But
I think you're
there
vulgarizing
should
this
be
a little bit.
coherent
No,
response.
look
to
at me.
what we're not saying
I
that.
am thinking. My thinking is, you would see a cabinet that responds to the Bobby Wine threat.
Exactly. It's not looking.
I don't see that.
No.
yeah, because
You would
Uganda
see a
doesn't
cabinet.
vote like
No,
that.
you would see a cabinet that responds to effective mobilization of voters.
Exactly.
I don't see that in
It's
some
not
of the
there.
changes that have
No,
been made.
because Uganda doesn't respond
No,
like that.
it's not just about Uganda.
No,
It's about the
no,
entire country.
Let's
And
take Uganda, for example. In 2009, they had just gone through the Kayunga rights. Then, almost in the middle of the election, they passed a land law and a cultural leaders act that were sort of Uganda, or at least the cultural leaders act was passed, and the land law was in the process, that were sort of centered on Uganda. Uganda still voted overwhelmingly for the president. So it's possible President Museveni has decided over time the dynamics for Uganda are different.
Mhm.
And therefore, it's not about the ministers, it's not about the things I do for them. The ministers I send, it's about something else. And maybe he has the answer, I don't know.
I don't know either. I'm really at pains to stick into the election thing because I really think this cabinet does not reflect any yearning to people who can mobilize for an election.
Yes.
I think it speaks to something else. We may not.
I think you speak to it in relation to how he has composed his previous cabinets, especially around time like this. If it does, if it's odd, if it changes, then we ask, what was the thinking? What is his intention? Yeah, and we're trying to read his mind, which is a difficult thing to do. I'm looking for that. And
What happened in 2001 when Besigye was coming as the newest contender? Did he bring in ministers that would help him win over? Because I think the mistake Charles makes is to think that what we view as Museveni's challenge now is what he views as a challenge. Because like Yusuf has said over and again, Museveni just with this cabinet wants people to keep falling over themselves to do things for him.
Yes.
Because he's showing you, and we're having this discussion before even the cabinet came at the Independent at lunch, and people were saying, oh, if Museveni, whatever he touches, if he wants you to be powerful, you be powerful.
You make you powerful. That's
if he pulls the plug, you deflate immediately. And I was saying, but it's incredible how we have given Museveni the position of God in this country. And this is what exactly he's saying. I am going to appoint Majozi, who came and brought an unpopular bill. If Abirga hadn't died, he would be on this list.
And so was Anita, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
Even Anita.
So for him, like everyone else here has agreed, his problem is not getting votes to win an election. Museveni knows that whether he gets the votes or not, he will be declared winner. He will be president. So his problem now becomes, when I am president, how do I get people to do things for me?
Exactly.
I hear you on that. And
if they are seeing this list, I'm seeing someone like Obua. He started working so hard. He's someone who has worked for as long as Bahati did for this position. People that, you know, there are a few people that come today and do one thing and just become ministers. But people like Obua, since he was... So this is for when I am president again.
Exactly. How do I make people do things for me?
Do things for me. Of course, things will come. You want people to fall over themselves to do this and that too. Yeah. So for me,
my question is beyond that. I will take a break and then pick this up after the break. Maybe we'll caucus and see where we have we
no, we don't have to
meeting. We don't have to caucus.
The issue is
let's take a break. Let's take a break and pick it up after in a moment. The Fourth Estate, and we are discussing the cabinet reshuffle that President Museveni announced on Saturday evening. Of course, the news hit late Saturday evening, and through Sunday we're still discussing this. Maybe it will continue to be discussed as we go forward during the week. Maybe there's nothing to discuss about it, because some of the faces are pretty faces that say where they have been for a longer period of time, and so there's no much rejigging. Let
me talk about corruption.
Go ahead.
Let me talk about Charles, starting by saying after the famous corruption walk that this cabinet is maybe what is going to help him to wipe out corruption in weeks, like he said.
No, I'm asking, is this it either had to be for corruption or not, or
but okay, so here who is the magic bullet now? Like you leave Kutesa there when he can't even travel to the US anymore. Because of the corruption, of all the corruption scandals.
I thought Kutesa, as the chief diplomat for this country, has immunity, so he can travel anywhere in this world.
How many times has he traveled anyway?
There could be other reasons.
But what I'm saying...
She's the lawyer here, and she knows international law and the protections it accords.
The part of Europe that I've seen,
but you also know that countries have the right to say, no, we don't want this person here, even when they have that diplomatic community. When they declare you persona non grata, even if you're an ambassador, they have a right. People
they
have
can
rights.
Reject you as an ambassador from posting. They can't reject you if you're a minister.
But what I'm saying is, like you leave the face of corruption and you say you have brought ministers that will help fight corruption. It's laughable. But we should stick to election. We should stick to 2021.
That's the assumption that
I am looking for. Guys, I'm looking for two things, like I said at the introduction. One, whether this cabinet speaks to the 2021 elections or speaks to the fight against corruption. And in my view,
neither of those.
I don't see either of those, like you guys agree.
Let me add a third one. So you talked earlier about technical people, putting technical people in charge. The thing we see now is that Museveni maybe feels like the so-called technical people don't make a difference, whether it's the case of Muloni or Azuba.
It has always been politics.
No, sometimes not. Yeah, so it's politics, yes. But for example, what would Azuba and Tege's politics be then?
No, what I'm saying is, you cannot expect that Muloni, because she's an engineer, she's going to make decisions like the decisions they have failed to make in the oil sector, for example, because of her. Those decisions are political decisions.
So
I
for
have
me,
never seen how someone's expertise, especially in Uganda, has helped change anything. At the end of the day, Museveni is the one that makes these decisions, whether there's which minister or what minister.
Yeah,
when.
But even when he makes the decisions, he needs people who are competent enough to be able to push certain things.
for example,
into consideration.
since Nasasira left, it feels like Museveni is not comfortable with the people he puts at work. So he's been changing them.
And do you think it's because Nasasa was an engineer?
No. It's for whatever. He must have been doing something for him that the others have
Because
failed
he
to.
was closer to power.
If you ask me, I think the elevation of General Katumba Wamala to a full cabinet minister in charge of works and transport is one of those things where you think he can get things moving in that ministry. So
Why?
I think
Why? Why?
no, the clout he brings to that ministry, his record as a commander. No, I'm in my personal opinion, I think that was a reasonable
I can
decision to make.
Dicta is in stages as when you.
Yes,
when you-
no.
you
Honestly
argue that-
speaking, I'm looking at other. I'm looking at other movements. You guys can laugh this off, but I think if you're looking for regional balance, okay. Katumba Wamala, his profile within the central region, his record
But
where
he's
he is.
been minister.
Yes, he's been minister,
He's a
but
zero kingmaker.
no, he's been minister, a deputy minister. Now he's elevated to a full cabinet position in the Ministry of Works.
Tell us about
I think
his
he can.
record in
They've been wanting.
Uganda, please.
They've been wanting to get.
I am thinking more about that punch during.
They've been
He's
thinking
the biggest
about.
pepper general. if you
They've been
think
thinking.
about it
They've been
this
talking about getting
army.
the army to be involved a little bit more. He has a record. He has a
way.
history.
Zero record.
And I'm thinking the
That
person he
does.
replaces came out of nowhere, largely
Does.
because she was technical, and now has been dropped because I
Does.
think she might have asked to be dropped. Monica's
Who
Monica
asks
Zuba.
to be dropped
I
in
think
this
she asked.
country?
They do ask to be dropped sometimes.
Can I come
She
in?
might
But
have asked.
Now,
Can I come in?
if it's for asking, there are people that have asked and they are still on that
Yes.
cabinet.
Like,
They have asked to be retired. Who?
Yeah.
Who?
like who? Why don't they just?
Who has asked and said, "I want
read-
to retire? Please don't
Why
reappoint me."
don't
Who?
they just write a resignation letter if they
No,
want to leave
because
somebody?
they talk to the president differently. I think so. If Monica asked,
Who
she's
has?
not the
Who,
only
for
one.
example, might have asked to be dropped from cabinet?
Charles, when we,
Tell me one name.
Confidential.
when we speak about the
Apparently.
technical dimensions of our reshuffle, we don't necessarily mean somebody having the know-how of doing things in a particular cabinet, but they have the mechanism of mobilizing people to move things in that particular direction. It could be out of sheer interest, out of sheer fascination, but as long as they show a bit of technical competence in doing things. But that is as far as it can go. I think at this table we will agree that it doesn't really matter who is in a particular ministry in this country. It doesn't matter more. The decisions come from someplace else.
Yeah.
It's not about who is there.
But
let's
think
think. Let me think about the unrewarded, unrewarded, and those who have been dropped. I think one of the coolest ways to think about this cabinet is those that had become liabilities. Aida Nantava has attracted a lot of unpleasant press for a very long time. I mean, she's been running for since the tragic murder of a young man on Kayunga Road. She's attracted plenty of very unpleasant press.
Agreed.
So
And
that
she's
was
been
really
making
enough to drop
comments
her.
that don't help her case.
And so is
And also
Kainda
she did vote.
Utafire being thrown away from
She
this
didn't
country
vote for age limit.
into the Minister of the East African something, right? He too has been really become quite a liability, but because the land wrangles is caught up in.
But that's kind of that thing.
Guys.
But here's the thing: he's reached a level.
Exactly.
Whoa.
Actually,
Can I
now
finish
he has less
Honestly
scandals than.
honestly speaking,
So
That's how
Charles,
kind
can
of
I
that
finish
thing
this?
rolls.
Please.
So
Go ahead.
among other things, in this there's been like an attempt to make sure you clean up of the bigger scandals, right? The scandals that, at the scale of scandals now, those are the people that have been having scandals. Tomorrow they're being taken to gender, you consider as a demotion, right? He's also attracted plenty of bad press under the ministry he's been holding. Maybe he had become arrogant a little bit. So he's Rukutana, who's been taken out from the investment portfolio.
From
from
deputy.
Deputy Attorney General.
So when this that have attracted plenty of negative press, I think one of the ways of thinking about this cabinet is see through the negative press that has coming to cabinet that you need to get rid of
his
it.
best behavior.
Yeah, I
don't think that is a key consideration. For Nantaba, I would agree. Nantaba, less than her negative press, but her own comments. She's not spoken well for herself. She's not behaved herself in a manner that would allow her to stay on cabinet. When Kahindo Tafire moves from Minister for Constitutional Affairs and is sent to the East African community docket, I am thinking she covers the East African community more than anyone else. Do you need a better person who has some leverage across the region, who can remobilize this very fractured region and try to get the East African community a little bit more functional? I'm thinking a little
bit. For me, I think it's sort of to deal with the Rwanda EAC minister.
Yes.
Because I think Museveni wants that unabashed Kahindo Tafire way of talking to return, because Rwanda has been talking a bit too much and Uganda has been very quiet, because generally Chirunda Chivenjinja is a calm, he won't do a lot of drama. So I think part of it, because if you meet Kahindo Tafire, and he's called Nduhunchirehi, I struggle with his name, and Nduhunchirehi has just said something.
Can call him Olivier.
Olivier has just said something. Kahindo Tafire will return something cryptic, something sarcastic, or something very abusive, if you want.
But also, you guys, I hear you on that. And
Kahindo Tafire, I think that's it.
His role was in the Democratic Republic of Congo, when he played an active position. His leverage with colleagues in Tanzania, who have been in this system, including the Magufulis, and across the border in Kenya. I am thinking it makes sense to move.
No, but which leverage? The last time Kahindo Tafire was involved with Kenya, it was over sugar that he packed, and the Kenyans took it.
Guys, so that's a different way to look at
I agree with Victor.
It's a little bit deeper than that.
It's all about countering the Rwandan.
It's countering Rwanda.
Yeah.
For me, it's countering. That's what I think.
See. But that Rwangos,
because
he has done.
Kahindo Tafire remains the chairperson of the Pan-African movement. He's been in the trenches. He understands the region. He's fought in it. He has some colleagues he has worked with in Tanzania, in Rwanda. Those guys, he has fought with them, he understands them. And I'm thinking, when you put him at the East African community,
here's the thing you forget, that although Uganda still has a very old cabinet, cabinets elsewhere, even in this region, have grown slightly younger. So it's not really true that he has a lot of colleagues in those other places. Because if you pick the guys that are all over the place, they are not that old.
Yes, you make a good point there.
So the point I'm making is that I don't think it's connections, because the connections.
But do you really think that
most of them have moved away from politics?
Charles,
what they have now is, I think it's Kahinda's ability to tell you off when they need you to tell you off.
Just that?
For me, I think that's all I see, because Kahindo Tafire is not a diplomat. He's not going to go and
I think you're really reducing him too much to something small, just bashing back.
I think so.
I think he's a bigger package.
Also to scare.
I don't think that can be the only value.
From journalistic lenses, and I think this is where journalism would help us make a bigger intervention. I don't know if we would demand that we often get explanations, like a paragraph or two, on why so and so gets a pick, because you see what we're doing now is trying to speculate what was the president thinking. So the assumption should be, and I think media should be able to put the pressure, so that cabinet in a way helps us to understand that they're appointing authority on all those around.
I don't think I don't think the appointing authority needs to do that for you.
Because that's the idea of accountability. Well, we know we don't account to anybody else, but the idea of accountability and fairness, I think, there should have been a paragraph or two.
No, I don't think that's right now what we're doing. I don't think the appointing authority owes that to anybody. We as pundits need to look at the individual names, dig up their history, dig up their experience, dig up their political contribution, dig up the constituencies they bring up, and use that as a basis, contextualize them. I think that's what people reading us, people viewing us, people listening to us need from us. To say, this is Kahindo Tafire, this is when he joined, this is what he has done, this is where he has been, and this is what he brings to the cabinet or doesn't bring to the position.
Charles, look here. Let me build on the Kahinda versus Rwanda issue. Just the other day,
you make a good point on that.
But just the other day, Rwanda accused our regional affairs minister, Honorable Mateke, of being in charge of some rebels. He's one of those guys that has been kept in, and my reading of this list is that people who are kept in their positions, Museveni was okay with them, with the way they operated. They are fine, and that's why he left them. And he left Mateke there. What does that? And also, by the way, speaks to Nantawa, because the last time Nantawa talked about having mafia in cabinet, Rwanda picked New Times. Rwanda picked a piece of that and spread it as a story. How Ugandan minister has said, Uganda is full of the mafia
in the cabinet.
And so,
said the same.
For me, it tells, that's true. But what it tells me is that his stance on Rwanda could be changing. For me, that's what it tells.
One thing I've been able to pick is that for someone like Philemon Mateke, he's 80 years plus, for goodness sake. He can't, someone was joking on some platform and said, the man can't command his own legs to move him. How can he command?
How old is he?
He's above 80. He can't command.
He's not the only one above 80
No,
in the
he
cabinet.
can't command an attack against Rwanda.
Can
They were
I
laughing.
say-
They were laughing at that.
Yeah, that's
So,
true.
Yes.
But can I say this? That I've
that's-
worked with Mateke. I've also worked with Sam Kutesa. Mateke is fitter.
I don't know about that. Well, I don't know. You say you have worked with them.
And
You say you
Charles,
have
when
worked with
you
them.
say
No,
he
but-
can't command an attack against Rwanda, doesn't that now bring you to what we were saying, how now Kahindo Tafire gets there?
No. The thing you were saying, because
but-
Rwandan press especially has relentlessly tried to
Paint
target
Mateke,
Mateke
yeah,
and
that's
paint
true.
him as a commander of the rebellion, partly because of the region he comes from and the constituency they think he leads, as some kind of leader of the Bafombera community on the Ugandan side, and they think he's been picking up that.
I'm not saying Mateke has done what the Rwandans are accusing him of doing. I'm just saying that M7, who wants a calm resolution with Rwanda,
would have removed him.
Would have sent him to, let's say, presidential advisor, so that he keeps his packs and whatever. But he's just saying, I'm doing this my way. You guys cannot influence me in any way. Because I'm very sure even the Rwanda press was attacking Mateke so that he can be dropped.
Okay. I guess we move on. Do you guys still want to comment on the cabinet?
Well, it's as bad as it gets. When you ask the national question, nobody has an answer. I don't think this is a cabinet for the country. It's a cabinet for political.
It has never been.
It's
Like-
well, as ever, it's a cabinet for the political party which wants in power for as long as it wants. And as we've, it is. We'll listen to our conversation here. We're moving from politics to the national question. We debate Kahindo Tafire that he's brought there because of the technical qualities he has that can help in.
Not really. Nobody talked about the technical
Well,
qualities.
no. Even bashing back is competence in its way. That is a technical kind of thing that he possesses in his armor. And then when we move to the others, we think about them as rewards. All right. So, I mean, we're caught up in this trap of understanding with the national and the political. But I think it's overly a political.
No, for me,
than
I
more
think
than
it's called
responding
political,
to
but
the
it's
national
also about some form of competence. It's I could pick a few others that I pick. I think, for example, that Frank Tumwebaze, at the moment he became information minister, the ICT sector was too attractive for him. Like, it has, more. They are going to this place, international conference for whatever, and so on and so forth. So he sort of abandoned. Like, he felt like he had arrived, and like Anita, who got investment, and like she's all over, pushing, being seen to be working. So he's moved to, I think, what I consider a risky position, because previously women have rejected a male minister for gender, and I've seen this. I've seen this complex.
But do you realize in that submission, you actually go back to what we said, But in believing he had arrived, he forgot playing politics to appease the man who appointed him. You see, that by that it means he loses. So the ideally the cabinet is there to reward those who actually speak up in favor of
decisions have never been about competence, especially in
no, but it's
cabinet
it's
reshuffles.
competence that serves. Okay, so it's not.
I mean, he has
we have
interacted. We have interacted
we have to
with.
speak to all the cabinet.
So, for example,
We have interacted with ministers in our work every day. And to be honest with you, I find a lot of competent people in Museveni's cabinet. Not just this one, but previous cabinets. They are people who know what they're supposed to be doing.
No,
and I believe that they make a contribution to this country. There are people who are in positions and you can tell that they are there, and you can ask why they ended up there. Then you can give the justifications why why he's put them there.
Charles, if you, by that submission,
yes.
you make us to ask
and I think
questions about all the ministers. We go to the Minister of Education and ask.
I think it would be wrong to think that President Museveni runs everything by himself, including command the army, command the police, run the cabinet. No, he has people who do some work. They may not do everything that he needs to do. And the ministers.
Those are not ministers.
No,
the ministers were extremely competent on this cabinet.
Okay, so let me pick
and in the previous cabinet, and they do their job.
Sarah Opendi, yeah. She's generally been passionate about health. Like,
so
if
why
you
move
talk,
her from
wait. So she's been passionate about health. If you talk to many people around the health sector, they are quite happy with her. So here's what I think. I think he has a problem with energy, yeah. So he's thinking, so this woman is maybe smart, and then he's like, let me
didn't put her in energy.
He did. She's a state minister for. She's one of the. State
Minerals. That's Chitutu.
No. Chitutu is a cabinet minister, my friend.
Ah.
So he does that. He moves her. He's like, she's not a doctor, but she's done well on health. So let me see if she can help me with some of my problem areas. I don't know, but it feels like some of the movements, some bit of, I know you work, you give some value. So let me put you in this place and see if you can add some value for me. It does feel like he has he's thinking about technical as well, or some form of guidance as well. That's what it feels for me.
Have we always had a minister for the vice presidency?
Yes, we have.
Yes, we do.
Okay, it's interesting.
I know. What does he do?
I have no idea. Just curious. I'm saying it for the first time.
He's always been there.
Yeah. So is it possible for us to talk about what the country is talking, away from us, the analysts, making sense of this stuff like? I mean, ministries. Elsewhere, reshuffles often happen when new governments come in office. That a new man takes over, and then there's a reshuffle. So now we gotten used to saying reshuffles when there's no change of government, right? I think this first.
No, I think you're wrong, Yusuf. No, I think you're wrong. When a new government takes over, that government establishes itself. So even when President Museveni gets re-elected, after a new election, he's gotten a new mandate. He reorganizes. He doesn't reorganize. He appoints a cabinet. So elsewhere, when there's a change, there is creation of a government,
and that's
which is a fresh thing. Reshuffle, by its very basic meaning, is that you are reorganizing from within.
Yeah, but that's the whole point I'm making, is that, it's 4 years in office, 4 or 5 years in office, and there's possibility of change of government. So ideally, you want to keep a guy in office for the 5 years because he's been there, they think that are ongoing. You want to keep them there so that there's continuity, right? Here, a guy can spend 4 years, 3 years in an office and they're kicked out and somebody else takes over. There are swaps. You don't understand why there were swaps between somebody takes over and then you move over. You don't understand. What's the motivation for that? There's great ridiculousness in the ways in which the things happen. That you can't sit down and say, this is the reason why this reshuffle happened.
No, but you mostly know, like Nabanja, for example, was like, we are changing the age limit to do what? Like, you won't do anything to us. And she's now a Minister of Health General Duties. It's as simple as that. Yeah, she's been launching hospitals built in her constituency, but that's
it.
That's also politics. So it's a mixture of things. It's a mixture of things. It's sometimes and that's why I think Katumba Wamala should make sure he's doing what the president needs, because next he'll be the one. energy and works don't seem to be working for him anymore. So he keeps trying out. Let me see if this works, if this doesn't. Of course, the one thing we didn't talk about is the number. 80 people, what's that? Like, what are they doing? And
why would we talk about the number when it's the number we've had for a decade? For like,
I don't think I find anything strange about the number.
No,
The
I
number
know
we've gotten used to.
Yeah, we
The
got used
stadium-sized cabinet.
it would be nice
used to it.
if you
But
reduce some of them.
I wanted just to list for us, like, out of the 80, you guys who say it's about competence, out of the 80 to list for us, at least if we have half of them that you can call competent in the areas where they are. Because at the end of the first one, at the end of the day, what was I going to say? We have the first 5 men of the first five.
Yeah, the first 5
leading this country. Their average age is above 77. It's like 78. And you people who are talking about the campaign cabinet, you have that to counter a young man of 35. That is strange.
35 or
Then
37?
I don't know.
37.
Oh, okay.
82
So and
Either way, he's young.
so in the end,
He's half
like,
the age of those who
if we get lucky to get a competent minister, it's a bonus. But it's not what Museveni has in mind when they are putting these people there. Because if that was the case, the ministers you are talking about that we had, the Matembes during and the Mushegas and maybe the like, would still be in cabinet. But if it's about the theme of rewarding loyalty and punishing the disloyal, it's at the end of the day.
I can tell you, you're asking me the question. I think on this list, I can list for you people I have interacted with personally, and I think they're pretty competent. They know what they're supposed to be doing. The environment may not allow them to do the full measure, but I think in here you have a bunch of very good people. No, you have a bunch of very, very good people. I would question certain positions. I'm still trying to come to terms with the movement of Ephraim Kamuntu to Constitution Affairs from tourism, and the switch of Tom Buteme to tourism. Not a big deal, but for Constitution Affairs, I still need to understand a little bit. But if you find
the justice minister that was there is like,
the movement
how is
of,
he different?
Yes,
from,
we could discuss the movement of Kahindo Tafire, for example, from Justice and Constitution Affairs,
yeah, but how is he
to
different
the East
from
African
Kamu?
community. You could ask, but if you find, you could talk about what the movement of Moleka Mukama from State House to economic
Actually,
monitoring.
that one I can talk about.
Yeah, you could talk about some of those, but I think we really need to move on.
Yeah, I think some of those things were to bring some calm to the president.
Let's take a quick break. When we come, we'll tackle 2 topics in the last segment. Welcome back to this last segment of the Fourth Estate and the ruling of the Constitutional Court on a petition that Dr. Kizza Besigye filed in 2011, the ruling delivered in 2019. That has been the talk. 9 years?
Yep.
About 9 years. And a lot of the debate and a lot of the focus has been on the ruling of Justice Kenneth Kakuru. I need to put a disclaimer here. The essence of the ruling is in the majority ruling of all the judges of the Constitutional Court. The comments that the public has been debating are those of a single judge, who's Kenneth Kakuru, and many people will tell you, Agatha is a lawyer. She'll tell you this is what lawyers call it obiter dictum. That goes away. Comments made by a judge that tend to go away from the essence of the ruling, the issues that were raised in the ruling, and the reasoning, the legal reasoning, and makes comments that fall a little bit outside. But my personal view is they still make sense. They should be debated. Why did he make those comments? So I want to start with the lawyer and then go. What did you make of the ruling?
I'm supposed to talk about only Kakuru's judgment.
Please, both.
Talk about the ruling.
Talk about the ruling.
I'm asking you. I'm inviting you to talk about the ruling, not Kakuru's comments.
The first ruling that made rounds was Kakuru's ruling.
Yes.
And I had thought that was the ruling of the Supreme Court. And I was...
The 16 pages.
I was like, what? Because when I read it and I thought we have a constitution that upholds human rights, and we have all these issues that have come up, and the decision has always been that human rights and protection of human rights is the primary objective. So whether Besigye...
And you don't get a better champion than Justice Kakuru?
Why?
You think? Or
Why?
Human rights and human rights. And
because of his environmental...
Yeah, his record.
Yeah, so anyway, I saw it and thought, okay, because if that was the main ruling, the issues it would have is that you are making a ruling as though you have a personal problem with Besigye. And this ruling does not affect just Besigye. He went to court and is asking that court nullifies sections of the Penal Code Act that would affect everyone else. So for a constitutional court that is supposed to, that has that core mandate of interpreting the constitution or laws that go against it, it was a bit. I was a bit scared when I read the main ruling of Msota. Of course, it wasn't a good ruling. The only difference it has from Kakuru's is that for it's not so shocking. It's what we have expected so many times. And I want to first start by, there's a problem. If a constitutional court waits almost 10 years to decide an issue like that, let's say Besigye had been incarcerated under that law. He would be in jail waiting for this interpretation for 10 years. So that's something that I think the Constitutional Court, I don't know how it selects cases to tackle first, but I think that's an issue that should scare everyone in this country. His ruling, we have a problem of Article 43 of the Constitution that permits limitation of human rights. And it has made every judge want to run to it when they want to decide in a certain way. Yet, I thought that issue of Article 43, because if you say that although this whole Chapter 4 provides for human rights, Article 43 is going to allow for them to be... Article 43 says this... the rights are not absolute. Yeah. They are limited to public interest and whatever else. And public interest has never been defined in this country, so anyone can use public interest to limit people's rights. The only articles that don't fall under 43 are, I think, for slavery and and right habeas corpus, and the torture and degradation. So the rest, if you went to court and said, my right has been violated, there's always going to be a risk of them saying, but it's not absolute, it can be limited, which is what Musota said, that Section 65, which allows the police to stop people from assembling because they think there's going to be, it's not going to be peaceful. And the lawyers that made that case, the able ones, Ernest Kalibala and Mpanga, made it that it's a subjective test. For you to say that someone should think and say, no, this is going to cause a problem, like predict or with some magic say. So Article 43 that Musota talked about was settled in the case of Onyango Bo and Andrew Mwenda against Attorney General. And the late Mulenga said that although there are limitations, the primary objective is to uphold human rights. If you're going to limit them, it should be within the tenets of a fair democratic society or something like that. But even then, that has not resolved the problem. I actually think that those sections that allowed the police to arrest Besigye every time, remember that's when the spraying happened in 2011. I thought that the Constitutional Court would actually find them, not for Besigye, but for everyone else, find them unconstitutional.
So, I think that... Yes, Dixon.
Here's my thinking, that Justice Kakuru was the best comment on that whole process. Because you pick something that was done in 2011, and your ruling is based on Besigye's actions in 2016.
It's true.
I feel like those judges do not take, they know now it's politics. And the best way to survive in this system, what we've been talking about earlier, is you have to politic. If you make a comment like that, get your own judges, then you've been noticed and maybe you will be rewarded. No. You see, you guys, you're talking in an ideal world. What I'm saying is this, that even for the so-called sane ruling you're talking about, it was all politics, and Kakuru understands it's politics, so he writes it a certain way so that he can advance himself, because he knows the person that stands out. But
you're still talking about Kakuru that was against the age limit.
Yeah, but he's atoning.
He's atoning
there's a question about
he's
trying to atone for Mbali.
He's atoning.
So why didn't he in Mbali? Which was actually, because I talked to Justice Kakuru after Mbali, and for him, he had no problem with removing the age limit. Even his arguments were that it doesn't form the basic structured doctrine like people are claiming, so it is okay to amend the constitution and remove the age limit. That for him, his one single problem was on procedure. So if he couldn't do it in Mbale,
don't you find those two decisions?
If it's true that his issue was procedure, how can he then with a straight face say, Besigye did this in 2016, it should determine my action, my reaction to what he did in 2011.
If what Kakuru, I don't know if he genuinely thought so or he was politicking. For me, I still find it absurd. But if he thought that he needed to protect the judiciary from people that hold it in contempt, and don't ask me why he has chosen Besigye of all people, yet the government itself has always held it in contempt. But if that's what he thought, it doesn't matter that he's deciding a case, that he's talking about what happened in 2016, when the issue that was in court for determination arose in 2011. What I'm saying is that, Dicta, now, if you lodge a case in court, but by the time it has come up for decision, for ruling, you have done something that the court thinks you're holding it in contempt, they should have a right to...
Agatha, the question is, how does a court hold a case for that long?
No.
And then without shame say, I am going to use things that happened after these things were... No, for me, I feel like that's enough comment, because it just means the court is no longer interested in justice. This is not about justice.
Yes.
For me, for me, it's as simple as that. that if a court
And I
is
agree with you.
unashamed
I agree with
to
you.
hold a case from 2011 to 2019 and even put it on record, like you improve the record sort of and say we are even going to use things you did afterwards to show that that you should not have been here. For me, the thing it tells me is that the court is no longer interested in justice. This court is more interested in
for
politics.
the record,
hold it.
I agree with Dicta entirely that decision is absurd. There is where I disagree with Dicta is her saying that the court shouldn't have used what Besigye did
I am
after
not-
the
I
cause
am
of
not-
action arose.
I am not
Doesn't that compound the absurdity that you're talking
I
about?
No,
Because-
for me the absurdity is here. A citizen goes to court because they are aggrieved. And for you actually start your preamble by saying the person actually claims to be a businessman, but in actual sense is a politician. And you go and keep showing how he has, like, your main interest is in showing how he has failed as a politician and has resorted to what you're calling contempt, than in addressing
the substance
the
of the issues.
substance
that-
of the issue that affects not just that person, Besigye, but the entire country. And you know,
Agatha,
Ladies,
Let
let's hear
Joseph
from
speak.
Yusuf.
Yusuf.
Yeah, I mean, what I find fascinating is to carry on first from what Dicta has been saying. So there are two parts of Kakuru's comments. Let's stick for Kakuru's comments for a while. The preamble speaks to
Not the main ruling.
let's start
That-
with Kakuru's
that,
comment
no,
because
it's-
they're
for me
making
it's
the
a
news. I mean,
comment
they're both together. So part of it, he says Besigye claims he was assaulted, this was done, this one, but there's no evidence whatsoever. That's in Kakuru's ruling. He's
No,
questioning
it's
the
not.
evidence. No, there's places where he questions evidence, thinks that Besigye alleges, but there's no evidence. I can tell you, he questions the evidence.
No.
But then later,
Isn't it, I think he questions the state's evidence.
no, he's a Besigye's evidence. But then later, he uses things that actually appeared in the news to argue against Besigye's case. You see, that at one point you're okay to question stuff that everybody knows that has been happening
I
as not
actually
being part
didn't
of the
see that.
judgment,
I
but then
didn't
at the
see
end of
where-
it, you're using what is still in the public domain to make the case. But I have a bigger question. From the internal dimensions of the legal and procedures, I have a bigger question for me as a scholar of politics, not as a lawyer, and not as an opposition player. In the first place, why did Besigye go to court?
Okay.
What do you mean?
Even us who are calling the judgment absurd, what did we expect?
Yeah.
If you're playing
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
terrain of politics, going
No,
to
but-
court actually validates a tyrannical regime that
but
you're fighting
guys,
against. The more, I mean, from the comments here, we agree that the justice system has been heavily politicized. I think there we on.
So you're saying we shouldn't go to court at all now?
In moments, look,
we've had
in
progressive
moments,
decisions, really.
in moments of our aspirations for the future, yes. In our aspirations for the president, and especially if your kids of SJ who has aspirations for the president, set to topple a government that you actually label as dictatorial, I think going to court actually legitimates the entire process. I've been very
want to respond.
anti. Like for example, when you had the Tojikwatako, after Tojikwatako, we rushed to court and had a dramatic performance in Mbale. I think that was a waste of time.
A waste of time.
And many of those
Mama
things have
Mbabazi
come.
in
Mama Mbabazi going to
2016.
court in 2016 was a waste of time. In fact, it actually works against those who claim to.
Yeah,
fight
because
against-
actually Kakuru used it.
I think that's the Kakuru
this is why
argument.
I find Kakuru's arguments really powerful in
makes
this
sense,
context. Why do you even have to come?
No,
Can I respond? You know, we all, and I was telling people that we all have a right, and it was said recently in some case of Monda versus Moses Monda. We all have a right to express our problems, our complaints against government and its institutions. Now that I say, and we have all done that. So for Besigye, if Besigye has said that courts are corrupt or they are by cadres, it should not deny him the right to go to court and seek redress and get it. We have all talked about places like Mulago, how incompetent they are. Does that mean if I go to Mulago, I should not be treated?
The analogy is poor. The analogy is poor.
It's not poor.
Agatha,
It's
here's-
not
the
poor.
analogy is poor.
Agatha, here's the problem. For example, when Amama Mbabazi went to court, when his another candidate was basically in jail, what he did was legitimize that
process, what was
process,
it?
and now it's being picked to even be used against, because Kakuru actually makes that argument.
Yeah.
That one.
The Supreme, that's the basis of his contempt of court. That Besigye is doing contempt because the Supreme Court already decided on this. No, he says it.
He says it.
Yeah,
He
he
says
does.
it.
He does. He does. He does say.
And so I sort of agree
Oh,
that
so are you saying if the Supreme Court decision hadn't been there, Kakuru would have decided differently?
no. Maybe
Because
not.
he started-
But then his argument wouldn't be like, as court we decide. He would have made it.
He
in another
started
way,
by
in another way.
saying that since Besigye doesn't recognize the current government, it means he doesn't recognize the courts.
Yeah, and
the
then
judges
goes ahead to
under
say
it.
that
And
No, but
It's
I think
contempt of
I
court.
think
Yes,
where
yes.
Justice Kakuru makes a mistake in using that analogy, which is the complete revolution theory. He quotes ex parte Matovu.
yeah.
I think that the mistake he makes is that Besigye took this issue. It's not his mistake that his complaint was not resolved in a government he did not denounce. He might have made comments about it. He had not sworn himself in. The failure of the court to deliver a judgment for him
Earlier.
is
earlier
a problem
is
in
not
itself.
Besigye's problem.
Is that
And-
it
and-
comes after he has already denounced
it's
the
a
government?
problem. It's like, for me,
Because
that's the
Justice
best
Kakuru
comment
picks
on that
a
whole
petition
process.
that was filed in 2011 and uses a new government that came into force, into effect in 2016, which Besigye disagreed
Yes,
with.
yes,
So
yes.
that is not Besigye's problem. That is the court's
but-
problem.
but-
And Justice Kakuru makes that, I think, fundamental mistake. Number two,
Can I respond to that very quickly? Why
Yes.
I don't think it's a mistake on part of Justice Kakuru. Brother Agatha started really well. He said, justice delayed is justice denied. 10 years alone is a political delay.
Mhm.
All right? On the part of Justice Kakuru, he's actually telling Besigye, we take you seriously.
Really?
Your utterances, your actions are taken seriously, that we even use them in our judgment. Basically, he's telling him, you don't have to come to us.
we follow a common law system here where precedent is important. Huh? And for Justice Kakuru to want this to go on his record as a precedent he's set, as a ruling that will be studied in the future, like we still study ex parte Matovu and the views people have about it. Subramanian and the others.
I'm not sure you study all of them. There's some
Yes,
judgments.
no,
You don't study all of them.
I think I found that, and for him to pick and quote The Guardian online and quote
Yeah, that was interesting.
some Kenyan newspaper, some online Kenyan newspaper, to make the basis of the argument of Kizza Besigye's denouncing of the government, and therefore the institutions that it has created or created under it, which is the institution of the judiciary and the other institutions, I found that a little bit odd and strange.
They take it
Yes,
serious.
you can discuss the main ruling, which is the failure to declare unconstitutional those sections of the Constitution, or I mean of the Penal Code Act.
And using
that-
flimsy excuses.
Yes,
also.
those excuses. But sometimes you might want to think, if they struck them down, what would that mean? You remember when when they ruled against Section
Same thing
32.
as you just said.
Section 32,
precedents.
Section 32 of the Police Act,
in the
32A,
Chivumbi case.
in the Chivumbi case, they left the other part, but it had not been pleaded, which makes a fundamental difference.
Do you remember how we celebrated when you know, the fourth sedition case?
Anyway,
But you know, in the end, at the end of the day,
For me, I'd like to talk about
At
the
the-
people. I want us to be able to talk about the people who died in Kampala soon. So my only quick comment is, this was a political thing,
Exactly.
and Kakuru delivered on the best political commentary on that whole process.
Exactly. Yeah. Because you ask the question, you've just hinted on the question, would it change anything?
you know,
Like somebody said to me that, you know, the inconvenience that Besigye suffers every time he has so many of these cases on things that are really unconstitutional, if the interpretation was given as being called unconstitutional, would it change anything? Would police still stop
think-
inconveniencing him? Would it change anything, really? Because you are telling us to work within this terrain when the judge is giving his judgment. The idea of creating a legacy, a precedent, is big on his head. I don't think so. He is a political player, and he has to respond to the politics of the time. Whether you guys are going to use this judgment in future,
And
that's your
I'm
business.
thinking,
It's not his.
I don't disagree with you. He would have still delivered it If the court had ruled, for example, to dismiss Besigye's case like they did, without going into this extensive commentary that Justice Kakuru did, they would still have delivered a political statement. If, on the other hand, they had ruled to the contrary against the government and declared these provisions of the Penal Code Act unconstitutional, they would have still made a political statement, and it would have been made. But
on his side, they're on the side of power. You forget.
yes, they're on the side of power. I hear what Dicta was saying. Was Justice Kakuru, by going this extreme, was he trying to atone for Mbale? Possibly he was.
Actually, not necessarily.
Actually,
not
necessarily. I really think
I have met that. I have seen that guy. I have seen how
I have talked to Justice Kakuru, yes,
like there's a way for him. It's always personal. I have seen him talk about the opposition, that you're not going to change the government by that hooliganism of thinking you will go to the streets and do that. So it could be that this is actually what he thought, not politics at all. That he thought this has held court in contempt.
We need to move on. I'm being told that we have very little time to end. But let me encourage people. People have been debating and only debating on the basis of the ruling of Justice Kakuru, which is 16 pages. There are other rulings by the other judges.
No, there's just one other.
Yes, one other. The lead judgment
no one agreed with Kakuru?
Justice Musota. No, because a lot of what Justice Kakuru put on his record is obit, as people would call it. I think you lawyers would call it that. Obit. It's not to the substance of what was being what was being decided by the Constitutional Court. A few comments from you guys here on the continuing devastation by the rains, especially in this country. If you contrast what we are experiencing here, what is being experienced across the border in Kenya, what is being experienced, I think, in Eritrea, with what is happening in Southern Africa. The Zambezi, I was watching something I think on earlier today. The Zambezi that has now dwindled to trickle, and their prayers for rain in that part of the world. In Malawi, in Botswana, even in South Africa itself, which have not seen a drop of rain for a very long time. Wildlife is dying, livestock is dying, the environment is scorched.
You know what I find fascinating, and I think it's a big failure on Museveni's part as an autocrat. Autocrats tend to focus so much on the infrastructure. And I think Museveni has failed really terribly on that, because the only way you can cement your legacy as an autocrat is you do a lot of infrastructure. Adolf Hitler.
You haven't seen the roads that are crossing from one point of the border
to the other.
He hasn't seen
people sitting in the roads because
you haven't seen you haven't seen the bridge. You haven't seen the expressways.
And talk of the power dam.
You're not talking about the power dam. You're not talking about.
It's cosmetic infrastructure. Like autocrats, Mao Zedong transformed his country. Adolf Hitler invented things, pretended over the invention of things, and made what Germany is today. The industrial in the period when Hitler was president of Germany, they saw a lot of industrial invention and progress. Now, it's the problem with our autocrats that they don't even focus on those things that earn them votes. Natural disasters happen, right? Fires, tsunamis, they happen. They don't hurt when your government fails you. When your government is doing the right thing. What hurts Ugandans more is that we anticipate that our government is doing enough. Like Kampala's flooding hurts more. Not because there's climate change and because because the rains have been raining.
But the rains we are experiencing are not there.
It hurts more when we see all the cosmetic work that Jennifer see unrolled throughout the city that we see just by a drizzle. The slight drizzle is spending a slightly longer period, and the city floods. That's when they hurt. The tragedies in eastern Uganda, in Mbale, rather than Bududa, when like constantly people are being covered under mudslides. It hurts more.
And nothing is being done.
It hurts more by the reoccurrence.
Yeah.
The reoccurrence hurts more than the natural disasters happening. It's the same when the Pakwachi Bridge, when people go into Pakwachi, rather than Arua, can't travel. What hurts more is that, have you traveled? Have you driven on the Pakwachi Arua road? It's crazy. The potholes are humongous. You can't believe it. You find them like cutting through the entire road, and they're still there. Now, it'll rain going for a week. The road is impassable. It hurts more, not because we're witnessing climate change. It hurts more because we see a government that has tried to invest in infrastructure, but a little drizzle. I mean,
Yusuf, you're making these comments when COP25 is meeting.
Yeah, but
and this is 25 years of global leaders, activists, meeting every year to discuss about climate change.
So, Charles, we don't have time, but here's what I want us to agree on. That Uganda is not really, it's a climate change problem, but it's not the biggest problem that we have. Take Kampala. One of my sisters was saying the other day that Ugandans will miss Museveni when he goes because he allows lawlessness. People are constantly building in swamps, filling, throwing rubbish in drainage, doing all that. And you call KCCA, for example, and you tell them about this, and they ignore you. So the rain we are seeing now, because think the other day there was an earthquake in Nepal, or Greece when a fire, and then it was a fire, and then people were swallowed. Or there have been places where you can argue climate change. Uganda is not one of those. We are actually, like, right now, you would say we are one of the best placed countries to survive. But the only problem is we are not doing the basic, because if we did basic things, if, for example, you moved people from Bududa and started planting trees, if, for example, you ensured Kampala is not flooded, you don't pick Lubiji and fill it for a road, then go on and go to the industrial area, what's its name? Namanze, and you fill it, and then you expect that the rains will be kind to you. No, they won't, and that's why people are dying. Exactly. It's as simple as that. It's not climate change.
I want to start by what you said, that autocrats, their legacy is infrastructure. I think those autocrats, Museveni is not the autocrat in that sense, because Museveni has to political patronage that maybe is an issue those autocrats didn't have to contend with, but Museveni has to organize a sham election, look to win it. So, and that once I wanted to bring me to the issue of priorities in this country, the issue of competence that we were talking about when we were saying that ministers are on competence. The issue is that Museveni's priorities, whether appointing ministers or whether doing what, is for himself, like his interests. That is why we have a Ministry of Disaster Preparedness that never prepares for any disaster. Even disasters that you know are going to happen. You know, disasters by their nature you don't know, but in Bududa, you know they are going to happen, but nothing has ever been done. So for me, the issue has always been that Museveni, the welfare of Ugandans, it could be important to him, but it's not the number one up there.
Well, I'll reserve my comments on this. Yes, I'll reserve my comments on this. We need to get out of here. I'm afraid I've pretty much run out of time. We need to get out of here. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Londi, still a minute from my producer there and make one announcement. We retreat people from my area retreat every end of year to discuss in what we call the Total People's Conference, and the next one will be happening. We did discuss it here before. I think we had the Honorable Beatrice Kiraso to discuss with her some time back when they were doing the last one. And we'll be doing, another one will be happening Friday and Saturday. When people retreat, go back into their communities to try and discuss issues that affect them. I think it's a very important thing. The Banyachigezi do that under the International Committee of Banyachigezi. They've been doing that for a long time. Buganda used to do it under the Tabamiruka. I don't know if it still happens, but we used to be very powerful meetings and discussions that used to happen down at Hotel Africana, I remember. And then the Acholi did it when the war was at its height. The Kachokema did. I think when there is a lot of this mess, it's important that people retreat and then they can have a discussion. And so the people of Toro will be doing that Saturday and Friday and Saturday, 20th and 21st. We'll see what comes out of that. Thank you very much, Yusuf Seronkuma. I forgot to say congratulations to those who have been appointed to cabinet. My friends Nabakoba, Kafuzi, Anyware, Dennis Hampson Obua, Peter Gwang, Mole Kamukama, Helen Adoa, and of
Nabanja.
course,
So
yes, Robin and Nabanja.
So you have friends in cabinet?
Yes, I do. I'm Ugandan.
Okay.
Ugandans. So
That's-
I have
Meaning
that
what?
takes it
Meaning
to
what?
Ugandans.
That
I
only,
hope that-
No,
that
I
all
don't think
Ugandans
one-
have friends in
No,
cabinet.
we know people. we know each other. We can't avoid. We can't say because one works in a different area that we shouldn't be talking to them. We shouldn't be knowing them. Even actually in the cabinet as it exists, I do have a lot of friends there.
You know how
Our time
beautiful
is
it
out.
is to
Yusuf
have-
Serunkuma, thank you very much. Thank you very much,
President
Agatha
Cabinet.
Atwaire. Thank you very much, Dictor Simwe. Do join us again next Sunday for yet another exciting discussion right here on the Fourth Estate. Have a good night.